Hello everybody, welcome back. So we just got done talking about predictions on Indiana Fever and the rest of the WNBA 2025 season. We're now going to switch over to talking about the top 10 best women's MMA fighters. Before we begin, I do want to remind you guys to like and follow the show. Also, to become a part of our show, that you can tip and donate using the link gsmcpodcast.net. This also puts your questions at the top of the list so that I see them and will be read on the air, answered and everything. Once again, the link is gsmcpodcast.net. Your support means a lot to us, of course. Now that we got that out of the way, we are going to start talking about the top 10 best women's MMA fighters. I'm very excited to go over this. I'm going to share or rank my top 10 fighters in MMA in a down order of top 10 to 1 because that's more fun. We're going to do that. So making that clear. So at number 10 is Sarah Kaufman. Sarah Kaufman started her MMA career in 2006 and soon became a household name in Strikeforce. Kaufman entered the MMA world through the ranks of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and earned her brown belt in 2011. Did I say melt or belt? Belt. I'm sorry. Sometimes I literally will say something and I hear myself, but I'm like, did I say that right or not? So brown belts in 2011. The notable achievements of her career included a Strikeforce Bantamweight Championship, and she became the first woman to win it, actually. Kaufman continued to exhibit her skill set in various organizations, including a brief stint in the UFC. An Invicta FC Bantamweight Championship reign added superiority to her MMA accolades. She finished her career with an overall record of 22-5-1. There we go. I'm so sorry. 11 KO. I want to highlight two things about Kaufman that, really stand out to me as her fighting career. One, she was the only hardcore championship fighting women's bantamweight champion, and also she became the Women's Fighter of the Year in 2009. Next, at number 9 is Megumi Fujii. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing that correctly. I believe she's the best submission MMA fighter. I mean, she introduced the famous submission move Megu Lock, so it would make sense that she is. Fujii began her MMA training when she was very, very young. She trained wrestling and submission moves a lot, and she was a black belt in jiu-jitsu. Her career record is 26-3, 1 KO. The career highlight of Fujii remains her 19 submission victories, which is a record for any female MMA fighter. Fujii mostly worked in small promotions in Japan before getting a break in Bellator, where she won 3 straight fights before losing the final 2. Also, Fujii remained undefeated in her first 22 MMA fights, and she also had a black belt in judo. I think it's called judo. I hear people say it like both ways, so I am so sorry if that's judo or jodo. I really think it's judo though. Anyway, number 8 is Miesha Tate. She is mainly known as the former UFC Bantamweight champion. She became the Female Fighter of the Year in 2011 and was also a purple belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Tate began her MMA career in 2007 but became prominent after her defensive victory against Alana Maxwell at Strikeforce debut. Tate... I'm so sorry. I just choked on my own spit. I'm sorry. I promise I'm not a mess. Anyway, moving on. Tate proved her worth in Strikeforce and won the Strikeforce Bantamweight champion. However, she could not defend it successfully and lost the belt to Ronda Rousey in a very historical and known fight. She won the UFC Bantamweight champion in 2016 and entered the list of few women fighters who have won the Bantamweight title in both promotions. She is an active fighter with a career record of 20-9, 4 KO. At number 7 is Rose Namajunas, who is a 2-time UFC strawweight champion. Namajunas became Woman Fighter of the Year twice in 2017 and 2021. She also is the first person ever to beat Joanna Jedrzejczyk. I'm sorry, I am so bad at pronouncing last names, especially Joanna Jedrzejczyk. We will be talking about her later. Just a little preview. Anyway, back to Rose Namajunas. So with her footwork and striking technique, Namajunas surprised many UFC fighters throughout her career. Her overall career record is 11-6, 2 KO, and continuous. So she's still going. And then for number 6, we have Holm, also known as the first woman ever to beat Ronda Rousey. This is where she got her fame from, really. She defeated Rousey at UFC 193. She has also had successful boxing and kickboxing careers too. She won the Boxing World Championships in 3 different weight divisions and was the inaugural Legacy FC Women Bantamweight Champion. Also, being a boxer helped her a lot in hitting, and she became one of the hardest hitters among women UFC fighters. Holm never backed off from difficult opponents and fought all the famous stars in the UFC. Her career record is 15-6-1, 8 KO, but she's not finished yet, as we know. Her right and left punching and kicking combinations at a high acceleration put her on the list of the top female fighters for sure. Now at 5, we mentioned her before, Joanna Jedrzejczyk, also known as the greatest female strawweight fighter. She was the first female European champion and holds the record for the most consecutive victories in the UFC strawweight title fights. Also, her fight against Strawwelly at the UFC 248 became the fight of the year in 2020. Jedrzejczyk started her career as a kickboxer, but soon became interested in MMA. She was known for her exceptional striking and held an undefeated record for the most of her career. And then, like we said, Rose Namajunas beat her at UFC 217, which was her first defeat after 14 straight victories, actually. Many MMA experts and UFC commentators credited her for putting the strawweight division on the map. She had 5 successful strawweight championship defenses, which is still a record to this day. Unfortunately, she did announce her retirement in 2022 at a career record of 16-5, 4 KO. Ranked 4th is Valentina Shevchenko, who holds the record for most title defenses by any woman in UFC history, and she's remained the UFC Women's Flyweight Champion and is currently number 3 in the UFC Women's Pound-for-Pound rankings. She's known by her nickname, The Bullet. Valentina Shevchenko is quick to adapt between striking and grappling because of her Muay Thai and kickboxing background. However, her striking ability is the best among active women's fighters, in my opinion. She is active in the flyweight division with a career record of 23-4-1, 8 KO. Valentina Shevchenko and Antonina Shevchenko hold the record for the first female sibling duo to work on the same UFC card. Valentina Shevchenko became Women's UFC Fighter of the Year in 2022 after her successful title defense at UFC 275. Moving on to top 3, at 3rd is Ronda Rousey. I feel like this should be no surprise at all. I talked about her in a video before of the fight that changed history. I recommend checking that out. The video was live streamed last week and I really enjoyed talking about that fight. So Rousey became the first female UFC Hall of Fame inductee, and she transitioned to a professional wrestler and won multiple world championships in WWE. Her undefeated streak and charismatic personality helped catapult women's MMA into the mainstream. Rousey became famous for her outstanding skills, judo-based grappling, and arm bars. Ronda Rousey remained undefeated in her first 12 MMA fights before losing to Holm. I'm so sorry, guys. Rousey announced her retirement, unfortunately, with a career record of 12-2, 3 KO. She had countless records in the UFC, one being the inaugural UFC Women's Bantamweight Champion. Ronda Rousey is the only female fighter among the 10 highest paid UFC fighters of all time, which is just a little fun fact. It's pretty cool to know that. At second, also not a surprise, is Cris Cyborg, who is the number 1 in the Bellator Women's Pound-for-Pound rankings. Her 21 KO victories are the most by any female MMA fighter. Cyborg has been a dominant MMA force and on top for almost 2 decades. Her notable achievements include winning the featherweight championships in the UFC, Bellator, Strikeforce, and Invicta FC, making her the only MMA fighter to become a Grand Slam champion. Cyborg has an impressive MMA record of 27-1, 21 KO. Cyborg also has incredible knockout power, as we know, which really adds to the list of best MMA knockout artist list. And finally, at first is Amanda Nunes. She is the first and only female fighter to retire as a multi-divisional champion in the UFC. She simultaneously held the bantamweight and featherweight titles, defending them in 11 successful defenses. She is known as the Lioness and has held the titles in both the bantamweight and featherweight division in the UFC. She's the only fighter in MMA history who beat Ronda Rousey, Cris Cyborg, and Holm. Amanda Nunes ended Ronda Rousey's career badly by knocking her out in the first minute, actually. Nunes was a complete fighter who knew when to use strikes, how to grapple, and where to apply submissions. Her versatility and aggressive approach led to many quick finishes, making her the greatest of all time. Obviously, she's ranked first on this list, so... She ended her career with an overall record of 23-5, 13 KO. So that completes our list of the top 10 women's MMA fighters. I'm so sorry. A lot of abbreviations. It gets confusing sometimes. And we're now going to move on to our next segment, where we're going to talk about the 2024 Core Hydration Classics, which gives us some information on the upcoming Olympic gymnast. Before we get to that, we are going to be taking a short break, so I will see you guys very soon.